Hey everybody, Mike Naso here from IPR365.com and podweather.com with a morning update on the tropics. It is June 21st, 2010, and as hurricane season 2010 looks to be a very active and potentially damaging season, we look out there today and our invest that we tracked across the Atlantic has dissipated north of Puerto Rico. More or less it is now gone. However, this new tropical wave that is in the eastern and central Caribbean Sea there, this is going to be our new feature to watch, and this one has to be watched extremely carefully because many of the models are now being consistent for the last 24-36 hours at a system moving in this general direction up towards the northeast and north central Gulf Coast within the 7 to 10 day time frame. And I know it's hard to predict that, but it does look as though conditions will be rather favorable in the northwest Caribbean and potentially the southeast Gulf, and waters are certainly warm enough to support development. And we are headed to July in just a few days, so this is going to be a feature we have to watch very, very carefully indeed. Now, again, that's just the water vapor imagery, and you can see we do have a shear zone that I'll mark in red. That is right, well, that's not red. This is red, and you can see there's the shear zone moving like that. However, it is lower wind shear further to the south in this area down here where the system is. And then in this area up here, there's also lower wind shear. So as this kind of moves out of the way and our system, what may become a system, moves on up, we could potentially see problems from it. Now here's the latest infrared satellite imagery, and you can see right at the end there we lost the frame, but you could definitely see there's the wave moving on up, and that cluster of storms right there is part of a much larger active intertropical convergence zone all moving up towards the Caribbean Sea. And it is a bit different because unlike what we typically see to where these systems will head on towards Central America straight over land, it does appear to be a bit further north for this time of year, and you can see that progression as everything's kind of moving upward. And if that does continue, then whatever this is will move towards the Western Caribbean. Now, the main concern about this system right now is that it does show deep convection. It is pretty good thunderstorm activity flaring up as we speak, but also the shear. Here is the latest wind shear, and you can see again there's about 40 knots of wind shear right across Hispaniola. This is what got rid of our system we were tracking. However, this new wave showing up at the bottom of the screen here has a much better environment over the top of it, and it does look as though, even though there may be a little bit wind shear wise coming up towards Jamaica, it will carry a little bit better environment with it. And then by the time it gets to the Western Caribbean here, conditions will be much, much more favorable for development. In fact, there's the shear tendencies to show you a little bit better what I'm talking about. You can see currently the area it's in and moving into is rather favorable for development. And as this shear zone in here is off to the north and east, it will continue to help vent the northern portion. If we were to get a low pressure forming, say somewhere within this area here, we could actually have it vented off to the north. However, that's not even the concern because it doesn't look like it's going to develop in that area. If it does develop at all, it would probably occur in the Western Caribbean, which is currently under high wind shear, but all the models indicate, at least most of them, that there will be an anticyclone over the top of it, meaning high pressure aloft, which would create an outflow pattern, which would be favorable for a hurricane to develop. Not saying this is going to become a hurricane, but the option is on the table. You can see water temperatures extremely warm right here south of Cuba. Very notorious for being warm. I remember Hurricane Charlie exploded into a Category 3 hurricane just south of Cuba, and then a Category 4 off the west coast of Florida 6 years ago around the Bahamas. And of course, where we have the oil spill, water's extremely warm. I read a buoy report the other day where apparently 98-degree water over the oil slick. Now, if a hurricane passed over that, it might not be able to draw up the moisture from the oil. We don't know. We really never been in that situation before. However, water temperature wise, 98 degrees for a hurricane, I would not want to see what happens with that. But if we do get a system that ends up moving up in this general direction over western Cuba or through the channel, it would have warmer and warmer waters to the coast, at least if it headed up towards the north central Gulf Coast. Now, there's another reason it may be flaring up is the MJO, the Madden-Julian Oscillation, and that's why we have our systems in the Eastern Pacific, which I'll touch on, but also the wave train on the ITCZ is very active. Another blob over Africa that's going to eventually move off, and we're getting closer and closer now to July, and it looks like things are a little bit on the up and up this year, so we could see some Cape Verde activity in July if that were to keep up. Now, the Canadian model does show in 5 days a developing tropical storm near Jamaica, and it pulls it on up a little bit faster. You can see there is some interaction there with Cuba, and in the longer range kind of parallels the coast of Florida as a tropical storm, maybe a minimal hurricane. Also note another strong hurricane forming off of Mexico, not the one we have now, but a different hurricane, and we'll have to see if that verifies. The NAM model also, in about 84 hours, shows a low here, a low here, and a low here. So it's picking up that there's going to be some kind of problem down in the central and western Caribbean by Thursday. Okay? Now, it's Monday morning. So we still got a few days before this would transpire. But if it does, not only would there be the potential for development, but rainfall. Hispaniola, you don't need more rain. Cuba, Jamaica, you guys could get pummeled with rain showers even if this system just remained a tropical wave. And of course, that's not what some of the models are showing, and that's what's a little bit concerning at this time. Now, here's the European model, and you can see it moves the system up and makes it into a powerful hurricane. You can see it shows it in about 2 days. Tomorrow, the blob in the Caribbean looking bigger, moving eastward. And then what happens to it? It moves towards Jamaica, and it becomes a hurricane. It hits western Cuba, becomes an intense hurricane in the Gulf of Mexico. Look at the eye popping up there on the cloud forecast, and slams into the Gulf Coast. But pure and simple, right over where our oil slick problem is, in towards Alabama, Mississippi, Florida Panhandle. Now again, this is a good 10 days out, so there's no reason to be worried about it yet. We just have a little blob down there with a low chance of development, 20% right now. However, with the model consistency, with the hot waters, with the pattern that this could be, as you can see on this cloud map, have a vent into this upper low here based on the model. That's why it's making it so strong. It has a very favorable environment. It is something that needs to be watched closely, without a doubt. And so we're going to be doing that over the next few days here at IPR365.com, and I'll keep you updated on the podcasts, and you'll definitely want to stay tuned to that. Now, we do have a hurricane in the Pacific. Hurricane Celia as of 5 a.m., 11.8 north, 102.1 west. Winds were 80 miles an hour, still gusting to 95, moving west at 9. A little bit faster, it looks like, over the course through time, but still slow over the next 36 hours. 986 millibars. It doesn't appear to be strengthening. It's been having trouble with some wind shear, and in fact, the eye popped out good a few hours ago and then got covered again by convection. However, by Thursday seems to be a key day here on this morning's update, but by Thursday, this should become a major hurricane and head on out away from land, but high swells for sure could affect areas of Mexico there in the Baja. We also have Blas. Blas is at 18.0, 117.1, 35 mile an hour winds. It's down to a depression, and you know what? We're not going to have to deal with it anymore. It's going to head on out and not be a factor at all, really, except, as I mentioned, for some potential for high swells. But that would be, I'd guess, about it with Blas. You can see our two systems there, and that is not our systems. There are our systems, and sorry about that. And there is Celia, and you can see Celia is looking a bit elongated here, but a hurricane, nevertheless, moving on towards the west, getting a little bit of a spiky little outflow jets there. And there's what's left of Blas up here, convection to the south. We're not going to have to deal with that anymore anywhere. So that'll do it this time for the tropics. I'll see you next time.